Greetings and welcome to Not All There. I am Chad. This is my podcast where I have discussions with other individuals in recovery about addiction, recovery, how you live a sober life. And if you are out there listening to this and you're feeling a little fucked up, then welcome. You are in the right place. We all feel a little fucked up because you know what? We're all a bit fucked up, and that's fine. That's perfectly normal. That's where we're supposed to be. It's right where we're supposed to be. On the show that you're about to listen to, I have a conversation with Kate D from Kentucky, and it's a banger of a conversation. Kate is a recovering drug addict. She has seen some things, she has done some things, she has been through some things, and she's sober now. She's in recovery. She's doing the deed. She's doing it well. She is out there kicking some major ass. She's going to talk a lot about the work that she's doing out there to help others. I'll have some links where you can check out some of the work that she's doing, some of the organizations that she's doing this work for. A big part of Kate's recovery is the spiritual aspect of her day-to-day life. And she has found her calling in the spiritual world. She's a practicing pagan. She is a witch, and she's fucking awesome. You're going to really, really have a blast with this conversation. We laugh a lot, which is good. She's very open, very honest, very sincere, and it's going to help you feel better, whether you are struggling with addiction or not, or if you're in recovery, or if you are not quite sure how to go about living a sober fucking life day to day. None of us really do. We learn some things along the way, and we work at learning more things along the way. And we take the day and our life a small bit at a time. The old analogy, how do you eat an elephant? Who came up with this? I don't know, but it's a bite at a time. Okay, that's how you live your life when you're sober. Be open, surround yourself with good people, reach out when need be. And if you are struggling right now, and if you happen to know somebody that's struggling right now and you don't know what to do, you don't know where to go, you want to keep it anonymous, you can reach out to me at notalltherepod@gmail.com. I do not have answers. I simply would have a suggestion for you. I'm also available to listen. If you just need to write some things and have somebody read it and respond and let them know that they got you, I understand, because I do. I know what it's like. In 2 seconds, we're going to Kate. But before we do that, if you're liking what you're hearing, whatever platform that you're listening to it on, please do rate the show. It helps. I appreciate all of your support out there. Everybody that's supporting right now, thank you very much. Pass it along. We're all doing a good thing here. I'm stepping out of the way now, and you are going to step into my conversation with Kate. I have Kate with me right now. And where are you exactly, Kate?
I am in northern Kentucky, about 15 minutes south of Cincinnati.
Awesome. And physically, where are you at this very moment? Is that a car?
I'm hiding in my car, away from my toddler.
I love it. I think that this is leading to a very good beginning. I'm really excited that you were here. And it's like we have only been talking to each other for about 10 minutes. We've gone back and forth, messaging back and forth online, but this is actually the first time we're actually hearing each other's voices and seeing, our actual faces moving and talking. So let's get down to it. The real exciting aspect of what we're going to talk about is the spirituality aspect of your recovery. But we're going to hang on a second because I want to do with everybody that's on here that's in recovery is just give us a little qualification. What led you to go out and do what you did and then lead to getting sober?
Oh, that's such a loaded question. I feel like it's a loaded question for everyone. So I grew up in northern Kentucky. I still live in northern Kentucky today, about 5 generations deep here. I like to say that I come from like the most perfect outside family. Like we are the all-American family. The only reason we didn't have a white picket fence was because we didn't have a fence. If it would have had a fence, it would have been white and picket.
Did you have white tires?
I mean, one boy, one girl. My parents were married
Oh
before
my
they
God.
had
Okay.
me. Everything.
Yeah.
It was pretty picturesque, and it was really pretty good. from the outside looking in, my mom and dad are wonderful people. My mother has since passed away, but she's a
Sorry.
wonderful woman. What they didn't really always see from the outside, though, was there were a lot of aspects from extended family. There was a lot of trauma that had happened from a very, very, very early age to me, and that extended throughout most of my life
Mm,
in regards to a family member. So I grew up feeling a lot of issues around that trauma,
yeah.
and it always presented itself as like perfectionism.
Oh
And
god.
I think that it's really important for the for this podcast to mention that like I grew up going to church a lot.
Mm. What, like
My
2,
uncle.
3 times a week or like
Yes.
yeah.
So I guess it's also important to be like, my mom was a bra burning feminist that did not go to church. My grandmother did not wear pants and took me to church every time the doors was open. My mother's brother is a Baptist preacher,
Oh, Jesus.
and I was going to be a preacher's wife and a missionary.
Oh my
I
god.
was very, very heavily involved, and that was my life.
Yes.
And as the song goes, until I got high, and then I wanted to join the Peace Corps. So, I started experimenting with drugs and alcohol around 14, um, and then it very quickly escalated to cocaine by the time I was 16, and then was using, prescription medication legally,
Okay.
opiate prescription medication legally by the
Uh-huh.
time I was 18, had a child at 19,
Mm.
um, was then prescribed 16 Percocet 10s a day for 6 weeks after the birth of my child
Oh my
for a
god.
botched C-section,
Oh my
and
god.
this was in 2007, and in Kentucky, it was a very different game around the OxyContin era. Like I said, I grew up in a pretty sheltered world. I wasn't even allowed to watch Dirty Dancing because there was an abortion. You know what I mean? Someone had an abortion in Dirty Dancing, and I had already smoked crack, and I wasn't even allowed to watch Dirty Dancing, you know what I mean? Like, in my household, so, it was a whole different scenario in my world,
Wait, 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 wait. You were smoking crack and going to church?
well, didn't everybody? Like, I mean, I just I did what I did, you know? I had to, like, have penance. 'Cause if
No,
not, I was
no.
gonna, like, burn in hell or something, you know? I felt a
That is
lot of guilt and a
beautiful.
lot of shame
Yeah, I
for what I
bet.
was doing.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
would do these things, and then I would pray, and I would pray, and I would pray, and I would pray, and then I would do some of them again. I would pray, and I would pray, and I would pray, and I would pray. Um, but ultimately, the first time I ever landed in an AA meeting, I was 17,
Jeez.
and it wasn't because of anyone but my friends were like, "Hey, my uncle used to go to these meetings. I think you should probably go there."
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was
So, I mean, it
pretty
took you
off the
like
chain.
yeah, it took you like right away, right? Like
Yeah.
just I mean, as soon as it hit you. Yeah, that's what it was like for me. I was really straight-laced, and I didn't get out there until I was 18. I had my first beer at 18, and it was just like it was fucking magical. And
Yeah.
and I was off. So do you have it like a so is there a lot of generational trauma in your family? Is it like
Oh, yeah.
right? Yeah. Okay. So I grew up in a rural part of Oregon, and so there was a lot of all kinds of wild shit that happened in both sides. My family tree is just full of crazy stories, and lots of stuff that just kept getting passed down and passed down, and it's still getting passed down to other parts of my family. I completely relate to what you're saying with that. Who exposed you to all this stuff? I mean, like crack and cocaine and pills. And I mean, like, is this just part of the region? Is it just like everywhere?
I was like, I had no fear. Like, the first time I ever smoked crack, I
I
walked
still
in I was 16. I
not
was like
smoking crack.
so I literally like, I was smoking weed and I was drinking, and then I got my first car. I was 16 and my car needed brakes. And I went to the auto parts store, and I would consistently find myself in these situations. But I walked in, I went to buy brakes. The guy behind the counter asked for my phone number. I gave him my phone number. He called me later that night. He was like, "Hey, I just robbed the safe at the auto parts store. Do you have a friend? Me and my friend are having this party." I was like, "Sure, like, I will come. I have a friend." And I would just go to these places. And then I got there and they were like, um, we are gonna go, they were like, "We're gonna go get some cocaine." I'm like, "Sure." And I'm like, I know how to snort something. And then they came back with cocaine, but it wasn't powdered form. And then we were all trying to get on the big, nobody had Google on your phone. We were trying to figure out how to smoke crack because nobody knew how to. And then we found out how to do it out of a pop can. And that was the first time I smoked crack.
Oh
But these
my
guys were
God.
like 27 years old. And I'm just like, they're 27, I'm 16, and they're like, "Oh, I just committed about 4 felonies. Do you wanna come hang out and bring one of your friends?" "Sure, sounds like a
Sure.
great time to me." You
Sounds
know?
awesome. Oh my God. That is,
I have a 17-year-old and an almost 16-year-old daughter, and they can't even order their own food at Applebee's, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, they can't
Yeah.
even imagine doing anything like
I,
that,
I, I,
thank
I
God.
I think that about my kids. My kids are almost 14 and 12. And it's like, yeah. Wow. Okay. So what got you sober? What was it? What was the bottom and what it looked like?
Well, after the 'cause I did a lot of the pills and then switched to heroin just like a lot of other people
Oh,
did.
okay. Good. Did you shoot, snort, or smoke?
I shot heroin, and that took a lot of about 10 years of my life off and on. A marriage, I got sober off and on in those times. I became a dancer for a good period of that time, homeless for a good period of that time. I lost custody of my children, got them back, lost custody, got them back, lost custody, got them back finally. I had a baby while I was on drugs. I did a lot of craziness while I was on heroin. Um, I had a massive heart attack and detox coming off of fentanyl in
Jesus.
2016, um, from detox,
Yeah.
and I was in a coma for about 8 days and in the hospital for about 30 more, at UK, and I, there was a lot of change that had effectively happened in that moment, and then in 2018, I relapsed when my mom passed away. And I found very quickly that if you have Medicaid and you have a heart attack and detox, you can no longer go back to detox. You are a medical liability. I mean,
Oh
you can't go back
no.
anymore.
Are you
And
serious?
I could not find a detox that would take me. And I fully believe that in that moment that my mother took it upon herself from above or from a different
Wherever.
plane
Hmm.
and blessed me with my son because I found out I was pregnant in the middle of a and that was apparently the only thing that would have saved my life because at that moment they're like, "That's the only way we can help you." And I was able to find recovery at that point, and that was in June the 26th of 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, that I was able to find recovery. And it's crazy because that moment has changed the entire trajectory of my life, not just from a recovery standpoint, but on such a macro level. Because now I work around changing healthcare systems and stigmatizing and care around substance use disorder and pregnancy across the state of Ohio. I work for a treatment center where last year I put 1,300 people into treatment, just myself
Amazing.
directly. I had just bought a new house. I have all of my kids. You know, they're all crazy. They drag me a million different places during soccer season. You know,
I know. I know that is.
I got 3 of them playing soccer right now, but I got married and I live a really, really
Congratulations.
beautiful life.
So we were talking briefly before we started, I guess, off mic, what have you. We mentioned the self acceptance part of recovery, and that's been a big part for me. I've been sober for 10 years, but it wasn't until about a year ago. So it took about 9 years before I was able to finally accept that what had happened to me as a kid, what had happened to me, and what I had done while I was out there running in Um, that that happened, and there's nothing I can do to change that, no matter how much shame or guilt or whatever I want to wrap around it, or how much blame I want to put on circumstances or people. I wouldn't be where I am or who I am without those things happening. And I finally was able to make peace with that. I do see people that struggle with that in any aspect of life, whether they're in recovery or not. It's the self acceptance part. There's this almost like a stigma if you don't achieve a certain success, whatever that might look like. And if you're not there, you don't want to accept that where you are is just where you are, and that's perfectly cool. You had this experience in this like power from your mom who just recently passed that helped you get to this place. What do you think it was that allowed that to happen? And was that kind of the moment where you just accepted everything that led you to that point was purposeful to get you there so you could have this connection with your mother now that she was gone?
So I know for me, like my mother, like knowing the person who my mother was, she was fiercely like, she was a big German woman, like big red hair. She was like a very like lion kind of woman. Like she was
Hmm.
very fierce, right? And she was very much that mama bear energy. And she had a very, very big heart for all of the things that had happened to her as an adult and as a mother now. I know that she didn't really have the tools to process through a lot of the things that she went through.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that she did do came from a place of love, but not knowing really how to navigate life. She was never given the proper tools. And I think that knowing that energy about her, that would have come from her. In the practice that, like the way that I practice my spirituality now, that was a gift from her. That was her way of saying, like, this is your chance. And she was always the person that had supported me. She had always had been like my biggest cheerleader, my biggest advocate, even when she cut me off and she was done, she was the one that had taken custody of my children when I was using, she had always been that person to begin with. So I know that that came from her. Just in my soul, I know that was her kind of just guiding, giving
So
me a way out.
yeah. Um, so you are what did we say? A practicing pagan?
There's so many different terms.
I
My
know that.
pathway. So the thing about paganism in general is that it can be uniquely you.
Right.
And I think that's what's so appealing to so many people
Hmm.
is kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous, what they would say to me is like, take what you want and leave the rest.
Right. And
Take
that's it.
what you can use and leave the rest. And so, and it can change, like it can shift. And it's not this hard, rigid structure that I have to operate within these bounds at
Right.
all times, or I
You're
will,
born a sinner. You're born
yeah,
bad.
yeah. And that, like, I remember sitting in therapy because I had to do a lot of trauma informed care. And it was
Yeah.
this concept that was so foreign to me, but made so much sense. He was like, the things that happened to you when you were a child, it's something called the Santa Claus complex. Like, he's like, think about it like this. He's like, when you're a child and you think of it like this, like, when you're good, you receive gifts. And when you're bad, you receive coal. When you think like that when you're a child, because you can't understand that bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people. So you
Mm,
can't understand that something bad could happen to you, and that doesn't make you a bad person. So
right.
that when something bad happens to you, you automatically believe that you are inherently bad. And I
Yes.
was like, and I just got chills like talking about it because it was
I've never heard
such
that
a
before. Yeah.
revelation for me
Yeah.
because I was like, oh, that's why I've always had like this self sabotaging internal feeling. Like,
Yeah.
I never thought of it like that. And like that really hit home for me. And I had never looked at it that way.
So, with you going to or being involved in church from as far back, I guess, as you could remember, did you ever feel a connection spiritually, or did that come to you later in life? I had a brief relationship with a local church, and it never really clicked for me. It didn't make any sense to me. It just didn't add up. As I've gotten older and more spiritual, I get I get where a lot of religions are coming from, even though I may not agree with the rigidity and all the structure of it. Was that something that you, I don't know, pushed back against as a kid? Do you think that's what drove you to be such a brave hellraiser, or was it something else? I mean, what do you think?
I tried really, really hard. I think
Yeah.
part of me really had always sought forgiveness because I always felt so
Mm,
bad. You know
hmm.
what I mean?
I
So I
do.
took it to the extreme of I have to be the best
Yeah.
Christian. I have to be the ultimate preacher's wife. Like I have to be a missionary. I have to go to the extreme because I have this ultimate penance that I have to pay because I'm inherently bad,
Yeah.
you know?
And you're out there doing these things, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
And then, but that was even from a child before I ever
oh,
before I
Jesus.
even started using, like, I didn't start using, like, this was, like, before I ever started, like, using drugs, like, before I
Wow.
started experimenting, like, these were the goals of my life because, like, I have to do these things.
Who instilled that in you? Was that just like something you decided at a young age that I'm going to
It
be a
was just
preacher?
a I was in a women's Proverbs 31 group thing where they were like, "Teach you how to be a wife,
Oh
teach you
my
how
God.
to do all this weird shit." Like, it was very Duggarish, this church that
Yes.
I grew up in.
Okay. Okay.
It
Got
was
it.
a
Yeah.
independent Baptist church.
Mm,
I don't know, it was very
mhm.
Duggarish.
Fire and brimstone, baby.
Yes, very it was very fire and brimstone. I tried very hard. My mom hated it. I came home and I was like, "Mom, I just wanna be a wife and a mom." She's like, "The hell you are." My mom sent me to church. She's like, "You argue too much. You'll be a great lawyer."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
She was
Yeah. She could see it.
My
She knew.
mom was an electronics major in the '80s. She built our first computer, you know what I mean? She was
Whoa.
not that woman at all.
At all.
She was not. But
What a badass.
it was such a both sides were just so different, in my world. And, I mean, I'm grateful to have both sides. My grandmother was for everything that the Christian faith really that I got to see a lot of the negative things being inside the back part of the church, like, with my uncle
Mhm.
being a pastor and seeing all of, like, the fakeness and the
Yeah.
politics and the bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah.
My grandmother was the epitome of what a Christian woman really was. She was amazing, and she was a giving person, and she never judged, and she was always there, and she was like that until the day that she died, and I was an adult when she died, and she was always supportive of me, and she was always supportive of every time I tried to get sober. She was a very, very, very good person, and I think that um, because I had that kind of guiding light, it made me, like, see that there was good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes down to is we just, we're all trying to be better people, right? And you don't necessarily need hard and fast rules to be a better person. You just try and be nice and do the best that you can and offer help when you can. And like, try not to judge people. It's like, I mean, we kind of are born judging people, but try not to judge people. So,
I'm of the belief, and my belief system may be a little different than others, but I am of the belief that if there is an omnipotent force in
Hmm.
the universe that is all knowing and all powerful, that creates life
Hmm.
across all cultures and all of these different people, then this force of life would have to know that it would take multiple pathways to enlightenment to be the best version of ourselves. Because ultimately, I think that's what any spiritual pathway really should be, is to be the ultimate and best version of yourself. And whether that be Christianity, for my grandmother, that was her pathway. And I would never try to take that away from her because that
Hmm.
was her pathway. And for
Yes.
me, that wasn't. That's not.
Right.
Because the most powerful version of myself is not found in that. That made me feel shameful and not be able to accept myself. And that very dogmatic approach, it kept me sick and it kept
Hmm.
me using,
Yeah.
and it kept me hating myself.
God damn.
And it kept my kids without a mother. And it kept my father and mother without a daughter. And it kept the city of Cincinnati on the hunt for all of the terrible things I was doing. You know what I mean? My community is much safer with me not being a Christian or attempting to be. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So
Oh, I love it.
there's no more felonies under my name. So,
Oh, that is amazing. So, what are you practicing now? Do you have like a daily practice that you have? Do you have a
so,
group that you're a part of? What's that look like?
so I do have friends that practice, and we all. My practice is pretty personal to me. My
Mhm.
new house has a whole witch room. It's like
Amazing.
I was getting completely set up, finished and set up now. It also has a locked door because my very Christian father and Christian stepmother will totally snoop into it, you know?
Probably afraid that they're going to catch on fire if they step in there.
You know what? At this point, if they start asking, then they'll get answers to questions they probably don't want to hear. They
That's why
sat
we
at
have
my
chickens here.
wedding while I had a pagan hand fasting. You know what I mean?
Oh my God. So,
You
wait,
know,
are you officially a witch?
I am a practicing witch. So, technically, my term would be a Hecatean witch.
Okay.
It's I it's just more of a female practice.
I see.
It's and to be honest with you, it's so paganism is typically around archetypal type energies. So where monotheism has just one typical deity, there's different archetypes. So if there was ever a time where I felt like I needed to really focus on a different part of energy in my life, whether that be, like if something was going on with my children or like something happened, like one of my children, God forbid, got cancer or something like, and I needed
Hmm.
to channel something that would be like more like a warrior type energy. Like I may switch to a different deity, but like, um, Hecate is more of like a darker feminine energy. And I really needed to be able, and for the last few years, and like in recovery for me, was being able to accept the dark parts of myself as well as the
Yes.
light parts of
Yes.
myself. And because it has been so successful for me personally with my level of acceptance, that was the hardest part for me was like, I had done some pretty terrible fucking things.
Hmm.
They got, I
Hmm.
had gotten down in the gutter.
Yeah.
And I hated those things, but, like, being able to accept them because I've also been able to use them for a greater purpose in service of
Exactly.
others,
Exactly.
and also the alchemy behind recovery really is alchemy, if you look at it,
Hmm.
alchemy is all about changing one thing to another, so what is service? In
There it
recovery
is.
is it's alchemy. It's using that pain and channeling it into a greater purpose. And I use astrology a lot. For me, astrology was really crucial. I know we
How so?
talked about it
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, but
a little tiny bit. So for me, I spent a lot of my life being told I was like too much. I'm a big personality. Um, I grew really fast. I was 5'6" in like the fourth and fifth grade. I was like the tall kid. I was always really
Mhm.
loud. I was kind of clumsy and I have a really loud laugh. I was just a big personality and loud. And I was like, quiet down, be small, ask
Ugh.
too many questions. I was
Uh-huh.
really smart. You need to be dumber, you need to be quieter, you need to be smaller. And I did that. And I hated it, but I did it. And then I started to really like delve into like my own astrological chart and realized that like I'm a Sagittarius sun, I'm an Aries moon, I'm a Leo rising, and like 50% of my astrological chart is all fire, associated with the fire element. Like I was never created to be a small person. I was created to be this larger than life personality. That's just who I am. I'm supposed to be passionate. I'm supposed to be outspoken. I'm supposed to have this like sparking leadership kind of personality. Like that's who I am at my core. And I'm a big believer in that, like, astrology is kind of like the cheat codes to life. You know, it's like and I spent seriously, I called myself like an armchair pagan. I spent like 2 years researching and testing my
Yeah. Of
intuition, astrology, everything. I tested it. Like, it's about to
course
be
you did.
wrong.
Of
It's
course
about
you
to be
did.
wrong. It's
I'm
going to
too
be
smart for
wrong.
this. Yeah.
It's wrong. And it was never wrong. And it was never wrong. Um, and then I started to like see where it was like, where my nodal axis started.
Yeah.
And the first time I ever got hooked on pills, it started at that time and it's ending in March of this year. You know what I mean? Like, so that 18-year
Jeez.
cycle, it's an 18-year cycle. And that's your nodal axis is like your north node talks about your life's purpose. And it
Jesus.
started when I started using heroin and
And
it's
here you
ending
are.
now. And like it's the nodal return stopped as I started to really get into the field of really helping people. Like, and it's just like so much lines up, like as you fulfill more and more of like what your life is supposed to be, the lessons you're supposed to work on throughout your journey. And the more you dig into it, the more there is. And the more my suspicions were like, okay, yeah, right. This is some bullshit. It's not a fortune cookie. Layers to it. And then I started looking at my kids' charts and it was like my daughters who are polar opposites of one another. Like I have a Gemini, Scorpio, Gemini child, like the top three. And then I have a Scorpio, Gemini, Scorpio. Like their astrological top three are the inverse of one another.
Okay. So
Like, I mean, like it's so funny because I always used to joke, like, my mom and dad always talked about how, a Sagittarius woman and a Taurus man are like some of the worst matches in the zodiac. But my mom was a Sagittarius and my dad was a Taurus, and they were married until she died for 31 years. And then, um, I wound up marrying a Taurus man and I'm a Sagittarius. And there's like all of these patterns, and I'm like, because my mom would always tell me, "You just need to marry a man like your dad, and then you'll be sober, you know? You just need the right man." Yeah, like, I'll just little like, there's just so many things, or I'll do a tarot card reading, and I'll be like, "Okay, okay, fuck, I damn it, I know it, okay." And then it's right, it's never wrong, it's never wrong.
oh my God. It's and for those out there that don't really know what we're talking about, it's basically that's the universe fucking with you, just
Mhm.
kind of telling you like, look, this is what's up. How do you apply this? Now, wait, you recently did you have an event where you were applying that? What was a
Yeah,
retreat? What was it exactly? Sorry.
so I
Words.
in addition to like my regular work and then the grant work with like the pregnancy related
Mhm.
substance use stuff, I do. I'm part of the board for a nonprofit called On the Front Lines Community Alliance. And it is a group of people in recovery that also work in the recovery field. It's a networking event every month where we get together
Mhm.
and we like, it's like peer support for peer support, and
Sure.
we pull resources and we just are more like boots on the ground. Like, how can we help individuals in our community and how can we help one another in our community? And we hosted, we got our first grant. So we hosted some Recovery Month events this year. We did
That's great.
our
Congratulations.
symposium, which was cool, but we did a cultural curiosity series. So we did one around the African American community. We had a grant around that one. We had one around the Latin American culture. And then we also have one around spiritual practices. And so we did a 1 day wellness retreat where I got to set the spiritual practices one. That was my gig. So I was like, I'll go to the other ones, but we said, like, we had during the wellness retreat, we had sound healing with the singing bowls, and it was like very
Yes.
restorative,
Okay.
like,
Mhm.
which it has to do with vibrational healing. That was really, really, really cool. We had restorative yoga. We had meditative walk with a labyrinth, and
What's
not
that?
David Bolt. Not the bulge. It is
Oh my God.
It is like it's an actual, like, it's a maze type style thing, but it's not a maze. So there's only one way in and there's only one way out. You come out the same way you go in. It's painted on the ground.
Okay.
It's actually, it was at this place called the Jesuit Center. So monks use them, priests use them. They're used across many different faiths, but it is painted in such a way that you walk in. It's a walking meditation. It was silent. We were all silent. It took about an hour and a half to go through it because you walk really slow. But your brain literally will work through a problem for you. The way that you go through it, you walk in with a meditation or a problem, and by the time you get to the middle, you meditate inside for a second. And when you walk back out, it's almost like your brain just naturally works through the process of a problem in a meditative state. It was really cool, and it was, like, in this big cathedral of trees, and the leaves were falling, and we were barefoot down by the river. There's a place called the Labyrinth Map. It tells you wherever they are near you.
I'm writing that down right now.
Yeah, it was so cool. I had never done one before. Then, we did, in the evening, we did, uh, celestial pathways, integrating astrology into your recovery, and then it was really all about learning about who you are as a person, and it was so cool because it's been so instrumental in my recovery. The person who
Mhm.
taught the class, is a personal friend of mine. She's also a woman in long-term recovery, and just, like, watching someone say, like, "I'm not neurotic, I'm a Virgo," like, "Oh my gosh, this makes sense," like, this makes so much sense, and she's like, but it's also talking about there's a dark side and a shadow side. And it sounds very much like, okay, character defects, right? So, like,
Right.
it can be this way, but it doesn't have to be because, like, while a Scorpio can be like very mysterious or whatever, it also means like you're very deep, right? Like, you can channel that into different other avenues. Like, how do you want to channel it? How can you use, and my mom used to always say, like, if you would only use your powers for good instead of evil, Catherine, like, if you would be unstoppable. I'm like, okay, X-Man, like, go away. Because that was her favorite thing. Like, that was just her thing. She likes superheroes. But, like, that's kind of what it would draw me back to is you just have to be able to understand who you are to be able to channel it in the most appropriate ways. And if you can understand and have a basic knowledge of yourself, it makes acceptance so much easier because then you can see how to use it in the best way possible.
Ah, my God, that's amazing. So, okay, we're talking about this. People are going to listen to it. How can people learn about these things? I'm sure there are resources, but is there something that you
Oh,
would
there's tons.
recommend?
Oh my gosh, I just bought this book the other day. It's like Radical Acceptance with
Yeah.
Astrology. I'll
Okay.
send you the name of the book.
Send me the name of the book.
I haven't read it all the way through. I just bought it,
I'll put a link.
but
I'll put a link in the bio.
yeah, link in the bio. I didn't write it. Shameless plug. Um, but there's tons of different options. I do know that there's like books. pagans in recovery 12-step literature, there's pagans in recovery 12-step meetings, there's all kinds of those things. Not something I particularly participate in, but it does kind
Sure.
of they have those.
I mean, if someone's
Um,
curious, it's a safe place for them to go
yeah,
and
it's definitely a
listen.
safe place to
Yeah.
go. For me, I'm a compulsive researcher, and like I said, I really wanted to
Guilty as
test it.
charged.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I wanted to test everything because, like and I also was, like, really worried that, like, what if I'm wrong and I go to hell?
Mhm.
Like, this is really bad.
Right, you have that to deal with.
I need to make 100% sure here that, like, this is a big one, you know? But, like, at some point, I was just like, "Okay, this is how much more
It's almost
proof?"
like the I don't wanna say it's desperation. I know that's what comes up a lot in recovery is that that's what gets us into wherever it is, a room or a recovery center, is it's the desperation that we just have nothing left, nowhere else to go. What else am I gonna do? And is you mentioned
Go
yeah.
ahead.
What was it like? Was that for
For me, it was like things just made so much more sense, right? I could never fully buy in. So, like, I could never fully buy in. I could be guilted in,
yeah.
and I
Yeah.
felt shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I
Those are
felt like
powerful things.
fear. I
Right.
felt fear and I felt shame and I felt all of these things. And I'm like, I don't want those bad things to happen. But it was
Ah,
never like, oh, I want to do this because I love or I'm
right.
drawn to, right? And I felt this inexplicable being drawn to because I was interested, I was intrigued. And it was like, I was intrigued not because it was like taboo. I was
Right.
intrigued because things were making sense. And
Too
it
much
was
fucking
like,
sense.
not just like, oh, these things make sense because it was like, this astrology lines up. It was like, okay, when I think about like something with a ritual, right? Like, okay, with correspondences, like I'd learn about things like, so if you're going to do like a cleansing ritual, right? So, like, you want to do something for relaxation,
Mhm.
what are you going to use for it? Lavender, the color purple, and lavender oil. Any like lavender is always going to be associated with relaxation and comfort, which made sense to
It
me because
makes
I'm like,
me too,
it's
because it
it
fucking
already
works.
makes sense. Because really, like a lot of those things are rooted in like like that's what pharmacology came from.
Yeah, it's like old wives' tales, as they would
It's like,
say. It's like,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And there was certain things that like, like my grandmother who came from Appalachia would be like, "Oh, you're
there you
sick.
go.
You're gonna need to rub an egg from
There
the
you
top
go.
of your head to the bottom of your feet. Somebody's talking about you. You do the
I'm
same
gonna go
thing."
dig
And
up
like,
this root.
like
We'll
that's
make you
a
tea.
freaking egg cleanse. Like that's an egg cleanse. They've been
Is
doing
it an
it in
actual real thing?
Greece.
Oh,
Yes.
oh
It's a
shit.
real pagan thing. It's called Occlumancy, I don't know, OCC Mancy. I don't know. It's a literal cleansing technique that they did in Greece and they do in Latin
You
America.
rub an
You
egg on
rub
you?
an egg, I don't know, and then you crack the egg and you can read it. It's a way of like reading if somebody has done
Oh, like
like
if somebody's
gossip
put
and
something on
it's like
so
bad juju or
yeah,
gossip, and then you
yeah.
crack an egg. But it's like it's
What
fucking
the
from Appalachia. My grandmother did that, who's never been to anything like that. It's because that's what old wives' tales and mountain people do it. You
oh,
know,
man. I'm not far
honey,
from those
and
mountain people. Yeah, okay, so what was there something I mean, okay, you're obviously a very curious, bright, you gotta get down and know everything, but what was it that made you look at all of this? Was there something that drew you to it? Did somebody mention something to you? Did you read something, hear something? Like, what was
Ancient
it?
Aliens. I got obsessed with watching Ancient Aliens, and I was like,
Pyramids?
yeah, I was like, dude, what if Jesus was an alien? What if all of this is bullshit? Like, I love the History Channel. I'm a documentary nut.
No.
And so like I've been watching like documentaries my whole life. Like that's just what I like to do is I like to learn. And so I just start I like to think. I like to like and so I just started to think like okay, I like to watch these things and I mean like they make
It makes sense to
interesting
you.
points, you
Yeah.
know. I'm not saying that it's
There's some logic
I'm
to it.
not saying that they're all right. You know, some
Well,
of
no,
it's a little out there, you know.
well, they got to sell a documentary, but no,
You
there's
know,
some
they
logic
gotta
to
they
it.
gotta have shows. Somebody's gotta buy
Yeah,
the commercials on History
exactly.
Channel, you know. But like they did make some valid points and I couldn't help but wonder. And I'm like, well, if maybe that's not right. And then I start watching like current day events. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
if this much is propaganda, how much of our history is propaganda? And then, you know, it's
So much.
COVID. I got
I tend to lean more toward the Native American approach, more of the spirit aspect of the planet, of the animals, of
oh yeah,
the connection with nature. That's always been a big part for me because I grew up out in the woods out in Oregon. Spent a ton of time by myself or with my
love
dog,
that.
just roaming around out in the woods. And that's what made sense to me. I can ground myself very easily just by putting my hand on a tree or looking at the water. I actually grew up on the ocean. So where I was, I lived in the coastal range of Oregon. So I had the woods in my backyard. And then a mile away, I had the Pacific Ocean. So that's what I would do. Like the sand, the rocks, the ocean, the trees, the grass, like that's what really grounds me. And I hear a lot of like, the astrological aspect of your spiritual program. Is there a nature aspect to it as well?
Oh, absolutely. So, for me, like I believe very much in like following it's called the wheel of the year.
Okay.
So, in my practice, it's like every season has its actual practice. So, actually, we just had what's called a Sabbath
Okay.
over the past weekend. So it surrounds the equinoxes and solstices, and and it's celebratory of each season. So, like this past weekend, my kids, we all did like I cooked a meal that was around seasonal root vegetables. I had a roast. I did all of that. My son had caramel apples for the first time because it's kind of that's part of the deal. We baked bread. We had a pumpkin pie. Like I did all of the wellness retreat where I was like walking around in the fall leaves and out by the river and like doing all of that. Like trying to make sure that I'm living intentionally, not just like physically for each of the seasons, but also spiritually. So, like, I don't make New Year's resolutions in the dead of
Mhm.
winter where it's the worst possible time to make a New Year's resolution. I
It's just another
actually,
marketing
you
ploy.
know, I do that right around the spring equinox where you're able to actually like watching as things grow, your goals
Yeah.
grow, like
Yeah.
living in alignment with the Earth's natural cycles.
Makes
So,
sense.
like, Mabon is all about like you're doing like gratitude, like you're coming in for the harvest. So, like, looking back at like what have you harvested? What have you done this year that you're proud of? What goals have you come to fruition? Looking into gearing up into the winter season where you're going to be kind of retreating, doing more like shadow type work, like internal work on what you need to be gearing up for the spring, right? Just like you would like almost like thinking of like what would you have done in pre-modern time? Like so if like a farmer, what are they doing at this time of the year? They're bringing all of their food in, they're getting ready for winter where they're kind of going to be in their house, kind of holed up,
Hmm.
working on things internally, getting things ready, planning for possibly pre-planning for the spring. And that's kind of what you do, but in an internal level, right? And I use that as how to live in alignment with the world around me.
That, God damn, see, now you're converting me. uh,
But it makes sense to me.
no, it does.
That makes sense to me,
I mean,
more
I,
so than anything else ever had.
Absolutely. I mean, I grew up, in the country. My dad was a dairy farmer, like, and a logger, and like I grew up like hunting and fishing, and we raised our own beef cow, and like we did all of those things while living in a modern world. But that was sort of like our fallback. That's what we knew, and that's what we did. In terms of like a big part of recovery for me, and I guess I don't know if it's kind of a spiritual part of what I try and do my best of, is the forgiveness aspect of not only forgiving others but forgiving yourself. And with your practice, how do you work that out? What is it that you do that you find helps you to work through these forgiveness of other people, but more importantly, forgiving yourself?
So for me, I have been able to forgive myself more so now than I ever did before.
Yeah,
More so now because I've been able to accept that there's both a light and dark side of me. Because
yeah,
before, I was always expected that there could not be a dark side of me
right.
because that would condemn me into hell. You know what I mean? There was no room. There was no room for error. If there was any error, there had to be penance, and you had to beg someone else for forgiveness.
Yeah. Jesus.
And like, I remember doing the steps to the utmost of my ability and begging God, like, for like, please to forgive me. And I meant it with every fiber in my
Of
being.
course you did.
And it just not feeling anything, you know?
Except shitty
And
about
like,
yourself. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And it's never been like that because it's like I've given myself permission to have both. Like, and to find that there's been purpose in both. You know, that just like the day has a night and a dark, and you have to have both to exist. Um, there's a sun and a moon, there's all of these things. Like, there's duality in everything, that there's beauty in both, and that there's nothing to be shameful about both. That just because that's part of my past doesn't mean that has to be part of my future.
Right.
And that
It's very important.
my anger has served its purpose for me in all areas because it's been protective. It's shifted my perspective. Every time before it was like I would forgive someone, but it would be like superficial. Being able
Just
to shift
words.
my perspective internally has given me a sense of empathy for people because it's like I don't really feel the need to forgive you because it's more like it's not like, "Oh, I pity you," because I really just, like, I'm judging you. It's never like that anymore. It's just like, "Wow, like, your life, like, I've been where you're at, like, I
Hmm.
really hope you heal." And, like, I really mean that because it's
Yeah.
like,
Of
I
course you
see
do.
myself in you. You
Yeah.
know, like, I look at you and I see the unhealed version of me,
Yeah.
and I never felt that before. It was like, "Oh, I pity you." You know,
Yeah.
bless your heart." Like,
Oh,
it was
bless.
one of those,
They're trying.
it was it was it was vindictive, and it was
Absolutely.
never real. But I feel like being able to give myself enough of that, like, broader picture, it's opened my eyes to a much bigger scope of things to know that there's also, like, this is part of a bigger plan, that we're all here trying to learn these lessons
Yes.
towards
Yes.
enlightenment. And like my lesson took a lot of twists and turns, and I hurt a lot of people along the way in those twists and turns, but it landed me here, and I know that this is where I'm supposed to be. And like, I don't know, I don't get my feelings hurt anymore. I don't People don't really ask for forgiveness because I don't get really perturbed by much.
Good for you. Oh God. Okay. That we got to, we're going to have to wrap this up. So before we head out of
Sorry.
here, no, no, don't please. This is, I mean, I could keep going. Like
Yeah.
this is, we'll talk more, but why don't you give yourself a little plug for what you're out there doing? You mentioned it earlier, but why don't you give yourself a proper plug on what you're doing, who you're doing it with, and yeah, it's all you.
Yeah, so I am the outreach success manager for the Coach Recovery Center in Southwest Ohio. So I coordinate people into treatment all the time from all over the place. Literally, today I got a call from Florida, Indiana, a lot from Ohio, mostly from Ohio, but some from Kentucky. So I do that. And then I also work for a project called the Empower Project. It's a grant out of Cincinnati Children's Hospital and then also the University of Iowa, working with doctors across the country, changing health systems, trying to improve outcomes around substance use in pregnancy. And then I serve on the board, part of the founders of the Hamilton County Peer Advisory Council and the On the Frontlines Community Alliance, around peer support and peer wellness in the Cincinnati area.
And you're a mother. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's why you're hiding in your car right now.
And that's why I'm hiding in my car. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I've really, really enjoyed this. And I look forward to like talking to you more. So thanks so much for being here.
Oh, no problem. I like talking to you. It was a fun conversation. So
Yeah.
I could
Thank
talk
you.
about this all day.
Oh, me too. Me too. All right. Thanks a
All right,
lot.
bye.
Bye. Told you it was a good one. Kate is amazing. I adore her. It's been such a pleasure to get to know her and talk with her off mic, offline. She's great. As somebody who has been in the world of recovery for 10 years, I applaud all the work that she's doing, man. Everything that she has been through to keep at it, to go out and to help others, man. She's doing great stuff. Kudos to you, Kate. Keep it up, man. You're a rock star. I'm taking off. You go out there, enjoy yourself with whatever it is you're doing right now. Keep it up. You're doing good. I gotcha. You're not alone. All right. Be kind and loving to others, especially right now. Let's be kind and loving to one another. Accept people for who they are. Meet them where they're at. Be kind and loving to yourself. Give yourself the big hug that you know you deserve. All right. You take care. You'll hear me soon.